A pleasant morning to everyone. Happy Sunday to all. Welcome back to the sanctuary of the living God. Shall we open our Bibles in the book of Genesis, chapter 26. Our passage for today is the entire chapter of Genesis 26. But I will only be reading from verses 1 to 5, and I will relate to you the rest of the story as we delve into it. Genesis chapter 26, verses 1 to 35. And then we will read only 1 to 5. Verse 1. Now there was a famine in the land, besides the previous famine that had occurred in the days of Abraham. So Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines. The Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. For to you and to your descendants I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath which I swore to your father Abraham. I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven, and I will give your descendants all these lands, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Because Abraham obeyed me and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." May the good Lord bless us upon the reading of His Word. We will continue with the series entitled When God Meets Man. If you can still remember, we started with the first part of it that was entitled Meeting the God Who Sees. Remember when Sarai made some plans to fulfill what God desired for them to have, having their children and descendants. And then Sarah waited and waited, and there was nothing that happened. And so she said to Abraham, "Let's have this servant of mine, Hagar. Maybe through her we will be able to fulfill what God promised to us." And so they did what they thought was good. And so when Hagar became pregnant, she despised Sarah. And because of that, Sarah also responded negatively to Hagar. And that resulted to Hagar's running away while she was pregnant. But in the streams of the desert, God saw her. And that is why the first portion of this series was entitled Meeting the God Who Sees. And then she was advised by the angel to go back to where Sarah was. But when she was already there, she gave birth to Ishmael. And then later, when Abraham was already 100 years old, Sarah also gave birth to Isaac. While Isaac was still a baby, when Sarah weaned him, what happened next was Sarah saw Ishmael doing something to Isaac that she didn't like. And because of that, Sarah told Abraham, "Drive this woman away along with her son Ishmael." And so the two ran away from the presence of Sarah and Abraham. But when they were there at a certain portion of a deserted area, they were about to die. But the God who sees did not only saw what they're experiencing that time, the God who sees heard the cry of the lad. And that was the reason why we entitled the second portion of the series, Meeting the God Who Hears. And then the other Sunday, we discussed about, not last Sunday, but the other Sunday, it was then when Abraham was already enjoying the presence of his son Isaac, when Ishmael was already away. And then Isaac was there when suddenly God told Abraham, "I would like you to offer your son to me." And so God brought Isaac to Mount Horeb. And when he was about to offer his son, the Lord called him and said, "Do not do that to your son, because I will provide for an offering, a sacrifice for myself." And that is why we entitled that message, Meeting the God Who Provides. So I hope you still remember. So we started with chapter 16 of Genesis. We went to chapter 18. And then the other Sunday, we talked about the God who provides from chapter 21. And so we'll continue with this moment when God appeared to Isaac. This was the time when Abraham was already dead. Isaac didn't have anybody to run to when there's a problem. Isaac didn't have the parents anymore whom he could call whenever there was a problem that would exist in his time. But you know what? Right at this moment, a famine happened. That was mentioned in verse 1. Another famine, not the famine that was experienced by Abraham, because during this time he was already dead. A famine took place in the land. Isaac didn't have a parents to call unto, and then he decided to go to Egypt, the south of Israel, southern part. You go beyond Israel's boundary and you will reach Egypt at the southernmost part of it. And so Isaac was on his journey when suddenly God appeared to him. God called him. God conversed with him for the very first time. God showed himself or revealed himself to the previous characters in the scriptures in Genesis. But it was the first time that God conversed with Isaac. This was the first time. And so what happened next was, in that conversation when Isaac was about to go down to Egypt, God told him, Isaac, do not go down to Egypt. Do not go down to Egypt. And I would like us to take note of this statement, because the statements in verses 2 and 3 are very important for us to understand the whole chapter. Okay? So if we miss verses 2 and 3 of chapter 26, we will miss some important aspects of the chapter and the rest of it. So let's go back to verses 2 and 3. It says there, the Lord appeared to him and said, do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you and bless you. Now, take note that it is in this very beginning of the chapter, these two verses mention two important places that God was talking about with Isaac. Other than Egypt, God told him, stay in the land which I will show you, which I will be giving to you, a land where I will be bringing you. And then after saying that statement, he said, sojourn in this land. So there are two lands mentioned here. The land that he's going to show to Isaac later, and this land where he was, where he advised Isaac to sojourn in that land. Now I tried to look at the meaning in the original context of the word sojourn. It gives us the idea that staying in a very temporal way. For a certain short period of time, you're going to stay in that land. You sojourn in that land. So I would like us to see these two aspects of time. A longer period of time, which is stay in that land which I will show to you. Later, you will stay in that land for quite a long time. But for now, you sojourn in this land in a very short period of time. That was the land of Gerar. So this time, Isaac responded to God. And then he just allowed that words of the Lord to sink into his life. And he stayed in Gerar. So he was Gerar during this moment. He was in a place that was not his own. He was in a place where somebody else was ruling as a king. And that character is called Abimelech in this chapter. And so he stayed in that land. And what happened next was this. While he was there, he was confronted with a question by the king and the inhabitants of the land. Isaac, we see that you have a very beautiful woman right beside you. Who is she? You know what? The same question confronted Abraham before. When there was a famine in the land, Abraham went to Egypt. And when they arrived in Egypt, a question was brought to him. And the question was, who is that lady that is with you? She is so beautiful. And the answer of Abraham was, she's my sister, when in fact she was his wife. This mistake was repeated by the son this time in the land of Gerar when Isaac was confronted by that question, who is that woman with you? And Isaac said, my sister. What was the reason why he responded that way? And the passage is clear with that response if you look at verse 6 and 7. For he was afraid. Take note of this. This happened shortly after he conversed with God. Shortly after God gave him his promise. What was the promise of the Lord? The Lord said to him, stay in the land which I am about to show to you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you, and I will bless you. Take note of the statements, I will be with you, and I will bless you. If you think about the statement, I will be with you, God is telling Isaac, my presence is going to be with you while you sojourn in this land. And while I am with you, there is nothing that can harm you. If there is a danger, I will cover you. If there is a threat, nobody can harm you because I am with you. Well, here comes Isaac in the land of Gerar. When he was asked, who is that lady with you? He said, she's my sister. Why did she say that? She was afraid. Now here is a picture that I want us to see. Isaac was a recipient of God's promise. And God's statement was, I will be with you. But that statement did not sink truly in his heart and mind, because though Isaac knew God, he did not understand God in a very first experience, because this was the first time that God revealed himself to him in a very personal way. He saw God move during the time of Abraham when God spoke to his father. He saw God move during those days when they had a difficult situation. But this was his first time when God addressed him directly. Have you experienced that, knowing something, hearing something, you know already about it, but you did not have a personal experience about it? And so when you are there already, somehow there is still fear in your heart. You apply for a job, and then you were interviewed, and then the one interviewing you ask you, do you know how to do this thing? Do you know how to encode in the computer? Do you know this program? And then somehow you heard about it already, and you would say, yeah, I think I know that. And then you were hired, and then on the first day, you were feeling anxious about it, because even if you know something about it already, you didn't have experience about it yet. First time ko kasi. That's why pag may kinakasal ako, tinatanong ko pag umpisa pa lang, kinakabahan ba kayong dalawa, yung couple? Oh, pastor, first time kasi. Alangan, kasal yun eh. First time. Even if you know something already, and yet you do not have your first personal experience, there is still fear that would be moving deep within inside you. Isaac experienced that. Isaac was afraid of what is about to happen. If he would say, he's my wife, probably he was thinking, they're gonna kill me so that they could get the woman. He was afraid. And then the text clearly tells us that this happened for a long time. Now look at verse 8. It came about when he had been there a long time. And I see this line very important, because meaning to say Isaac had been living with that lie that he mentioned for a long time. He was there in that land for a long time, and that lie was with him for a long time, until one day Abimelech saw him caressing his wife, and Abimelech confronted Isaac. Isaac, you said she's your sister, but why are you caressing her this time as a husband would caress his wife? And Isaac said, I'm sorry, she is really my wife. She's my wife. And I want us to see a very significant turnabout here, because when we look at verse 11, instead of treating Isaac harshly, instead of punishing Isaac, you know what King Abimelech said when he found this out in verse 11? So Abimelech charged all the people, saying, he who touches this man or his wife shall be surely put to death. Now here's the thing. In the earlier part of the chapter, God promised Isaac, I will be with you. And that I will be with you is a promise, protection, covering. And here comes Isaac. He was afraid. He lied. And yet beyond that lie that he made, there is a God who was in control of everything, that even the king of that land where Isaac was a foreigner, God used that king to provide protection upon him and his wife. What are we trying to say here is that God is just simply fulfilling what he said to Isaac, I will be with you, I will protect you. And Isaac never thought that this person whom he was afraid of was the one who's going to be used by God to protect him and cover him. You see how God thinks. You see the wisdom of God moving in the narrative. You see how God is going to bestow his protection in the midst of that famine that they were going through. Abimelech said, whoever shall touch this man or his wife will be surely put to death. There is a fulfillment of what God said earlier. Moving to verse 12. Now Isaac sowed in that land. There he was already, nabuking na siya. He admitted already, and Abimelech pronounced his protection upon this man, Isaac, and his wife. And then Isaac started to sow in the land. Now the text doesn't mention about him sowing in the earlier part of the passage. Verse 12 would give us an idea that he began planting. He began, producing crops in the land. And he was made by God very rich. And God is just fulfilling what he said to him earlier. Not only I will be with you, but I will bless you. Always remember, he was still in the land of Gerar, the land which God said, sojourn in this land. This is not the land which God was telling about earlier. Stay in the land that I will show you. This is not the land that land yet. This is still Gerar. This is the land where God was telling him, sojourn in this land. Stay not permanently, but for a short period of time in this land temporarily. And he was there. God was showing his favor to him. Despite the temporariness of the moment, God is showing and displaying his faithfulness to his words. And now Isaac was made so rich by God that even King Abimelech saw it. That even King Abimelech acknowledged it. You know what Abimelech said? He said, you go away from us. The Lord blessed Isaac already. Abimelech said, you go away from us because you are too wealthy already and you are too powerful. You know, these two goes together, even in our time today. Wealth bears power with it. If you are very wealthy, you are considered very powerful. In those days, Isaac was made by God very rich, not just rich, but very rich, and his power also was rising that time, that even the king of that foreign land was threatened by his wealth and power. Go away from us. Look at verse 16. Go away from us, for you are too powerful for us. God told him, I will be with you and I will bless you. Sojourn in this land, because even in the temporary place, I will display to you my presence and my blessings in your life. And so that really happened. And so Isaac left the place without quarreling against Abimelech. He left the place and he went to another place. And that is when he kept on digging wells also. I preached already from this passage before. When Isaac dug a well that was dug by his father before, he had a claim over those wells because it was his father who dug them. He had a claim over those wells because it was him who named those wells. You can see that in the text. The first well that he dug after Abimelech told him, you go away from us, he dug a well, and then some of the inhabitants of the land went to him and said, that well belongs to us. And so, because these people went there and complained and claimed the well, sabi ni Isaac, I'll call this well Isaac, because there was an argument over it. And then Isaac, along with his men, moved to another place and they dug another well. And then some men, again, inhabitants of the land, came and again claimed the well. And Isaac said, I'll call that well Sitna, because there were people who opposed when we claimed the well. And then he left again, went to another place, and then he dug another well, but this time there were no people who went there and claimed the well. And so he said, I'll call this well Rehoboth, which means to make room. Because God has given us a place, a room for us where people don't claim anymore. But did he stop already after that? He did not stop in his journey. He continued. He proceeded to a place called Beersheba. You see, in digging those wells, God showed to him his favor. God showed to him his provision. God showed to him his blessing. He kept on transferring from one place to another. Now he's in Beersheba. This time, another significant event happened. When he was in Beersheba, the Lord appeared to him again. The Lord conversed with him again. And God repeated the promise that he mentioned to him earlier. Look at that portion of the narrative, chapter 26, verses 23 onwards. Then he went up from there to Beersheba. The Lord appeared to him in the same night. Listen to what God told Isaac. I am the God of your father Abraham. Do not fear, for I am with you. Take note of the repetition, I am with you. And then he said, I will bless you. The same statement that he uttered in the earlier verses. And multiply your descendants for the sake of my servant Abraham. So he built an altar there and called upon the name of the Lord and pitched his tent. Now take note. In the earlier verses, I said, God mentioned to him two places. The first place is, I would like you to stay in that land which I will show to you. And then after stating that line, he said, sojourn in this land, which was the land of Gerar. And that is why Isaac never pitched a tent, not mentioned in the scriptures that he pitched a tent, which gives us the idea of settling down in the land of Gerar, because the land of Gerar was not the place that God had in mind for him. That is why when they were in Beersheba, when God appeared to him, that was like a signal for Isaac. This is the land that I was talking about, that I will show to you. That is why he pitched his tent in that land. When he was in that land, he asked his men to dig a well. And while that was happening, another picture in the narrative came in. Abimelech ran after him and went to him, not to fight. But when Abimelech arrived there, sabi ni Abimelech, Isaac, you are so blessed by God. In fact, the term that he used was, we plainly see. In other words, it is very clear to us, in our naked eyes, nobody can deny in this entire land that your God has been blessing you. And that must be an encouragement to Isaac, an affirmation of the promise of God earlier in the earlier two verses 2 and 3. I will be with you and I will bless you. Now Isaac is seeing this statement being affirmed by other people around him. I am blessed by God. God is fulfilling His promises to me in the earlier verses of this chapter through King Abimelech. And Abimelech was there and said, Isaac, we want to make a covenant with you. You are very wealthy. You are very powerful. We want to make a covenant with you, an agreement that you will never, ever hurt our people. Just as we have accepted you and we did not hurt you when you were in our land in Gerar, may it be that you will do the same to our people for the rest of the history. And so Isaac agreed with that. And Abimelech left after the feast that Isaac made. And then suddenly there was a shift in the story when you look at verse 34. 32. Now it came about on the same day that Isaac's servants came in and told him about the well which they had dug. And he said, we have found water. So he called it, what did he call it? Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. Now here is a very significant thing that I want us to see. At the very beginning of the chapter, verses 2 and 3, God told him, I want you to stay in the land which I am about to show to you. Sojourn in this land temporarily, and I will be with you. His presence, which means protection, and I will bless you, provision of material things, and add the rest of the things that he needed. And now, after that experience, Isaac lied. Despite the lie, God protected him, and God provided for him. Abimelech himself saw how God multiplied the resources of Isaac. That's why Abimelech asked him to move away. And despite that fact, he moved from one place to another and dug wells. And those wells were provided by God with water. Why? Because God was fulfilling His promise to Isaac. I will be with you and I will bless you. There is a promise theme here. There is an oath theme here in this whole chapter of Genesis. That is why the very last well that they dug in Beersheba, it was called Sheba, which literally means an oath. Sheba means an oath. And when Isaac named that well oath, Sheba, in his mind, I believe, he was thinking about the oath of God to him in the earlier verses. And now God has made it into reality, a fulfillment in his life. not just the sojourning temporarily in the land of Gerar, but now settling down in Beersheba, because this is the place that God told him about. I will show you in verses 2 and 3. Are you seeing the point here? The whole chapter of Genesis 26 gives us the idea of an oath, a promise, and the fulfillment of all those promises that God had uttered. Have you ever received a promise that was not fulfilled? Sometimes when I leave our house, our 2 children would tell me, "Daddy, can you buy me this?" If I am not sure whether I would be able to buy or not, if I'm sure that I could not buy, I would say no. I make sure I would say no. But if I'm not sure whether I could buy the thing that they're asking for or not, I would say, "We'll see. I will try to." At least I don't have a commitment to really bring that thing that they are asking for, because I would just say, "I would see, I will try." But whenever I know I could buy it, and then it's not harmful for them, it does good to them, and they will ask for something, I would say, "I will buy." I will make it sure that I will buy whenever I say I will buy. Because if not, I am giving a signal to them that I do not fulfill what I say. No wonder there are many children in this world today who are liars. It starts with how they see from their parents. The children would ask for a candy, and the parent would say, "When I come back, I'll bring some." They would go back without it. And that gives a signal to their children that mama and papa are not actually truthful to their words. And that can start there. Sometimes we wonder, where did this guy get this attitude of lying? It starts within the family. It's there already. Unknowingly, we are giving them signals that it's possible that you could not be true to your words. But that doesn't happen with the God of Isaac. That doesn't happen with the God that you worship. That doesn't happen with the God who created the universe, because once He said, "I will give this to you," that will be given to you. When He say, "I will protect you," you will be well protected. When He say, "I will provide," you will be well provided. That's the God that you have today. That's the God of Isaac. You know what? Reality is that in this life, there could be many frustrations that could make us insecure. Isaac felt that he was afraid earlier because he didn't know God. He didn't understand Him. But when he began to experience how God revealed Himself to him, that God's words can be trusted, those words promised by God, oath by God to him and to his father, would be transformed into reality. That was the time when Isaac trusted the Lord, not only in words, but in action. There was one of the months in the previous year, last year, somebody approached me and said, "Pastor, do you like to go to Israel?" Of course, my answer was, "Yes, I like to." And so he said, "You find a group, I'll pay for it." I tried to find a group. I did not find. Instead, I created a group coming from Zamboanga to go to Israel. We secured our tickets. We secured the slots. We secured the time for us to fly. But you know what? When COVID-19 came, everything is gone. We don't know when will it happen. You know, one thing that it taught me is this. It's so hard, no matter how we would exert our effort, no matter how much energy we bestow upon it, in securing material things on earth, there is no certainty in it. There is no security in it. In a snap of a hand, it can go away. That's a reality. But sometimes, when we go through this kind of experiences, it makes us feel insecure also in this life. If you think about those things, opportunities that you missed, I believe many of you here book a ticket already for a vacation, for a travel, domestic and international. I believe some of you miss an opportunity of a job, miss an opportunity of fellowship with a parent, miss an opportunity of knowing someone. You miss many things because of what had been happening through this pandemic. And sometimes it makes us insecure because there is uncertainty of the things around us. Isaac was in a famine. Isaac lived in a foreign land. Isaac had a problem with digging of wells and people coming and claiming it for themselves. Those things could have made him insecure. But you know what? He learned to live his life holding on to the promises of the Almighty. What can make you secure are those things that won't change. Listen, almost everything in this world will change. Almost everything. Even ugali ng katabi mo. It can change in a matter of time. So if you hold on to something that changes, you will be insecure. You hold on to something that is constant. Someone that will not change. And as far as I know, one of the things that would never change is that there is a God up there that when He says something, He will never break it. He will fulfill it. Cling on to the promises of the Almighty. Yes, a time will come. We are all waiting and looking forward that the Lord would tell us, stay in this moment for a long time. But for now, we are still in this pandemic. Sojourn in this pandemic. Because despite in the midst of this calamity, of this trying time, when God said, I will be with you, He will be with you. When God says, I'll protect you, He will protect you. When God says, I will provide, He will provide for you. Because in this world, you can only find security in the God who is true to His promises. And that is the very message of this whole chapter. God doesn't change, and when He says something, He brings it into reality. Cling on to the promises of God. I really love the song that says, you are so faithful. In the very beginning of the song, it has a line that goes like this. Like the sun that rises every day, you are so faithful. Is there a day in your life that you would say, I will continue to sleep even if it's already 7 in the morning because the sun is not coming? No. Even if it's during stormy and rainy season, the sun would always come. Even if it's covered by a dark cloud, the sun will always come. The faithfulness of God to His words and His promises will be even more certain than the coming of the sun every day for your life. With this, I am praying and I am declaring that God's faithfulness will be seen by each and every one of us. Not only on the time when God would tell us, you settle down now, but even in the midst of this pandemic when God would tell you and me, sojourn in the midst of this pandemic, and I will show to you how faithful I am. I am with you, and I will bless you. Whatever happens, I will be there for you. God bless us all, and good morning.